All right. I got it. I just don't want to go get it out because I might throw it at somebody tonight, Mr. Greir. Good evening and welcome to the July 3rd regular meeting of council starting at 7:19. But before we begin council business, I wish to offer my condolences on the tragic passing of Clark Goulet. Clark served alongside of myself and Councillor Fras on the Regional District Board, and also with Councillor O'Brien and myself on the English River Water Service Board. He was also a respected member of our community, not only as a successful business owner, but as a father, a husband, and a friend to many. Although Clark and I may not have always agreed on policy issues, we had many productive and respectful discussions. His passion for serving his constituents was always evident, and his sense of humor made working with him a true pleasure. I am truly saddened by this loss, and our thoughts are with Clark's family and friends during this difficult time. Flags at City Hall will be at half-mast until the end of the day, Friday. It's Friday is when this service is, so I just thought I would put that in. Now, I need a mover and a seconder for minutes of the council meeting of June the 17th. Moved, seconded. Nobody's going to move, but Councillor Fras, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Opposed? Good. With respect to the adoption of the minutes, in my absence on June 15th, or June 17th rather, I understand council had, let's call it a wholesome debate for approximately 45 minutes on resolution number 19-212 pertaining to the advisory design panel. I am about to introduce a motion for consideration that I hope will settle this matter. While I have stated publicly, I am personally in favor of an option where development permit applications come directly to council unless specifically referred to the ADP for a specific reason. I understand a majority of council indicated support for an amended process that would see council adopt a policy outlining which items go directly to council and which go to the ADP for its review. In the interest of unifying council and enabling us to move forward and allowing council and staff to strictly focus on the 5 strategic priorities that the citizens of Parksville have told us they are their most important issues, those things that will make the most difference in improving their lives. We can't get sidetracked by all the new shiny things that come up. You will hear me say that a lot over the next little while. We have to be disciplined and stay the course which we have laid out. We will all be required to lay aside some of those things we would like to see or would be nice to have and attack those things that we have set down to get done for this city. We have to put aside our own aspirations and do what is best for our city. So in the first step to this, I will step aside from this debate and hopefully put an end to it and allow us to get back on track for the other 5 priorities. Therefore, I'd like to propose the following motion. And I'm proposing it as follows. 1, that council waive the requirement to give advance notice for this motion. And 2, that resolution 19-212 passed by council on June 3rd and endorsed in the adoption of the June 17th council meeting minutes be rescinded. And number 3, council approve advisory design panel application policy number 2.29, subject to staff gathering information from applicants about the impact of the ADP on projected timelines and costs for review in July 2020, at which time council will then again reconsider the status of the ADP and its necessity. As I've said, I am not in favor of the ADP, but in order to go forward, I am prepared to support the extension of the ADP for a year and truly evaluate the effects of having or not having it at the time. This has been discussed to death up till now, so unless there's a point of clarification that someone needs, I will be taking each of the recommendations individually, and I'll require a seconder for my motion. So I need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Greir. I'm going to call the question immediately. You guys have all talked about it enough last time as you all, everybody knows everybody's position. So all those in favor of this motion? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So it's there for another year. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the council meeting agenda be approved? I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Greir, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Opposed? Fine. We approved. Sorry. We have one piece of correspondence tonight, Access Oceanside Association 2018 Annual Report. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the correspondence be received. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I need a mover and a seconder. Moving too fast. Moved by Councillor Greir, second by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Now, opposed? Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. Although the annual report was received, I didn't see I guess I need some clarification, and I'm not sure if Councillor O'Brien can give it to me as the liaison. In the past, the City of Parksville held an account where a grant was received to the Oceanside Access Oceanside Association, and I don't know if that still is being held by the City of Parksville, and if so, what their budget per se may look like. Or I do notice that they said that they're going to be asking for grants in the future, so perhaps as the liaison, just gently remind them to make sure that they have their budget information with that.
Okay, but we're here. We're just talking about receiving the annual report.
It's not a very full report.
Okay. But we'll go back. We'll talk about it in a second after I get this done. All those in favor of it receiving it? Opposed? Okay, it's carried. All right. And you, the two of you talking about them, it's just an information thing to them, is what I'm understanding. All right. You all right with that? Yeah, talk later. All right. We have one presentation tonight. Chief Norris, would you please give us the presentation?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Tonight, brief presentation just to request your endorsement for the fire department to hold pop-up or instant water parks throughout the community over the summer. So you might ask, what is an instant or pop-up water park? Well, we create a spot where kids and big kids can cool off by playing by misting water, and hopefully on hot days, maybe from an aerial ladder truck or other fire, water appliances off different pump trucks, that sort of thing. That picture right there is from a similar type thing in Vancouver. And you can see the crowd they have out there. So what are the benefits? So citizen engagement is the big benefit, interaction with our firefighters, a chance for our citizens to check out their fire trucks and the fire equipment that we use. It's an opportunity for us to recruit members. So in our community, we cover a population of 20,000 people approximately, more than that in the summer, a little bit less in the winter. And we have 4 paid staff and 40 volunteers. So we are always looking for volunteers. It's a chance to do public education with the community. It's a chance to teach fire safety and other types of safety, and cool people off, and of course have a little bit of fun. So, you know, I think one of the big things that we have to remember is that when we're going to an emergency or we're at an emergency scene, we're not really that approachable. And in fact, we prefer if the public backs off and gives us some room to work for their safety and ours. And so this is a really good opportunity to engage the public. So what's our plan? We'd like to pick, this is a new idea for us. It's happening in other communities, but it's new to us. And so we'd like to pick maybe 2 or 4, pick a couple of locations, have 2 or 4 events this summer and give it a try. We need to get the word out, so we'd work with the communication staff, work on social media, and work with members of council to get the word out and pick some locations. Of course, we need to monitor what our water supply conditions are like in the city. But on that note, we don't expect to use a lot of water when we're doing this. It would be a few thousand gallons, but nothing that would impact our firefighting reserves. And we would be sure to check with the utilities department before we did it anyways. We'd like to build on the program for the future years and just improve public engagement and have some good, clean fun while we're doing it. So what do we need to make it happen? We need your authorization and endorsement, mainly because, number 1, I'd like you to know what we're doing out there in the community. Number 2, we may be doing this when there is water restrictions on, so we want your authorization to do that. And those are really the main reasons. We're pretty excited about it. I know we have several members that are really looking forward to this, and we think it's a great opportunity. So I'd like to invite any questions, if any of you have any.
Okay, I need to mover and a seconder first, and then we can. Okay, mover and a seconder. Sure.
I'd like to move the recommendation as it's written here, but also include the month of May.
May? Okay.
And if you'd like me to speak to it, if someone seconds it, I can.
Seconder for May. Councillor Patterson seconded.
So the reason why I included the month of May is this last year we had the food truck festival that happened next door here. The fire trucks were out. It was stinking hot out. There was a little bit of shaded area, and it was a conversation that came up and said, can we please get this fire truck to spray a little bit of water out here as a fun idea? So since this is at the discretion of the fire chief, I trust him to make a decision as when it's appropriate or not. May can sometimes be very hot, not have so much water restriction in place, so I'd like to just even as an option out there for him to decide on.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're speaking Councillor Chandler and then Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, through the mayor, Chief Norris. Chief, I saw something of this very similar on a video, and now that I'm not a firefighter anymore, I sit and just watch videos and wish I was still a firefighter. But I did see this as very interesting, and what they had is they had old hoses and they poked holes in all the way through them to make it a kind of a long snake of spray, just sort of like the water park in a sense. So instead of one person just standing there and shooting it up in the air, it was very cool. So I mean, obviously you want both. You want the interaction with the firefighters too, but I just thought I'd pass that on. It was very cool. So
Well, I'll take it into account.
And through your worship to Chief Norris, thanks very much for your presentation. I totally love the fact that you're trying to get citizen engagement. I love the whole idea and so forth. And you know I'm going to come at it with, I'm so afraid of the water shortage that we have. Like I'm getting 5 or 6 emails and calls a week now saying about the water restrictions that we have. That's on one hand, and then the other phone calls come back and say, you guys got too much development going on, where's all the water going to come from? You know, we got like 700 apartments and so forth happening here. And then I get the other calls that are saying, the Englishman River is dangerously low for the fishies. And so I'm getting all this heat, and then we're could be possibly going to the next stage of water restrictions. And I think it's a great idea if we're in a water surplus situation. A lot of people don't understand that the ERWS, the water treatment plant, doesn't create any more water. It's treating the water we have. And so I know what you're saying is 1,000 gallons, you know, it's going to take 1,000 gallons here and there and so forth, but it's just, to me, it's giving a mixed message. We're telling our citizens of Parksville to cut back on the use of water, you know, do the water restriction, low liter toilets and so forth. And then we're saying, we're going to take a whole bunch of water, we're just going to blow it down the drain. And so the thing is it's like, where are we at here? I totally get what you're saying. It's just that I got this whole thing going on with water, and we're taking huge flack for the fact that, you know, we're going on to water restrictions. How could this happen to Parksville? So I'm just putting the comments out there. I'm just saying I love the idea of engagement, and it's great for you. But it's the use of water in our most restrictive time. And yeah, I know when it's not too much fun doing it in December, January. But if we could pump it out of the Englishman River when those floods are going down Martindale Road, yeah, you got my full support. How many people are going to show up? I don't know. But that's my feelings, Mark. You know, I totally applaud what you're doing. I just, you know what I mean, it's about the water.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I keep it considerably shorter than Councillor O'Brien. I echo a lot of his comments. But we do have a water park down in the community park. I think an event like this down in the community park with Kid Fest, with the kite flying, any of those days and everything would be a huge advantage to cooling off and for public engagement. And that I know that the water that's in the trucks and everything has to be removed and back and forth and everything, and lines tested and such, so I don't really have any issues with that whatsoever. At this point in time, though, you're looking for authorization and endorsement, so I'm wondering if we can push that forward and if I can make a motion to that effect tonight.
The motion's on the floor already.
It is on the motion?
It is,
on
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's so at the discretion of the fire chief, so.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Through the mayor, thanks for that presentation, Mark. I think it's a great idea too for engagement, but I have a concern with water in peak times like this. And I agree with Councillor O'Brien, it does send a bit of a mixed message, but I suppose you couldn't spray out something else besides water, like maybe confetti or something like that.
Councillor Fras. We're not asking for you to do a confetti, trust me. Councillor Fras.
One comment I was just going to make for council's consideration too, with for the firefighters, it is good practice for them to get on pumping on the trucks and being familiar with their equipment. So I see this as a training opportunity as well as a community engagement for those few reasons there too. Just them alone, I fully support it. Appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
And I will speak to this. Oh, Mark, did you have your hand up? I'll speak to this. This idea ticks off so many boxes that we want for engagement of the fire department, for opportunities to find volunteers, to getting the kids involved and understanding what's going on, it just goes on and on. And you know what? I think it's a great idea. And for 1,000 gallons or even 2,000 gallons of water, it's not like we're running out of water here right now. I mean, that's a fallacy. We have the water. We're on restrictions because we're taking it out of the wells. It's not because we're running out of water at this point in time. We have sufficient water. And quite frankly, come, Joe, when is it? September, August, October? We're going to have the new filtration plant up and running, and we will be taking the water out of the river for longer periods of time. And then it will take less for coming off of the wells. So, you know, it may be a little bit of a squeeze. I don't even see it as being that for right now. And, you know, God, I just think this is way too good. And quite frankly, if we have a problem with that, I've got a well on my property. I'll pump 1,000 gallons into your fire truck if that's what it takes, but just because it needs to be done. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this. Any other? Mark?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention, just as a comment, during the training sessions with the fire department, they're very, very cognizant of all the water they use. I've seen it in action. It's a huge proponent of what they do, and so at the same time, they don't wash their fire trucks during the summertime. So there's a lot of restrictions they're already putting in place already. I think in this particular case, this is probably water well spent, and I definitely support this. So
I shall be calling the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Note that Councillor O'Brien is opposed. Carried. Thank you very much, Chief. Let me know when the first one is. Reports. Committee of the Whole, June 3rd, Strategic Priorities Meeting Recommendations. I need a mover and seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Greir, second by Councillor Chandler. Any comments? Discussion? I think this is when... Okay, we're going to be receiving for information. All right, so we're receiving the report. That's it. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Next one, Committee of the Whole, June 17 Strategic Priorities Meeting Recommendations. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. If council passed any... We're good? Okay. You want this one done? Yeah, we're fine looking at it. Okay. Reports. Mr. Russell, would you please give us a background on the issue regarding consideration of a development permit for 151 Despard Avenue West and 292 Stanford Avenue West?
Certainly. If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration is a development permit in order to authorize the general subdivision layout amendment, the forming character of the buildings, the landscaping design elements. As such, the applicant is seeking the issuance of development permit. The applicant has proposed a developer's building scheme that they're proposing to register and title to provide assurance to the level of forming character of the proposal, and the registration of a building scheme is proposed as a form of the permit. The recommendations are as per the agenda to issue the permit.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Greir, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, keep going, please.
Certainly. If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration this evening is issuance of a development permit at Tynamara Resort at, what is their address here? 1155 Resort Drive. The purpose of the application is to facilitate a facade update to the exterior of the Texada building. This is an application where the renovations are in keeping with prior approvals of both the Gabriola building and Bolinas building at the site. And as such, there's a recommendation to issue the permit. I do want to provide one point of clarification. There's a slight inaccuracy in the staff report that I apologize for. There may be a slight change in the footprint of the building due to the need for an extra set of stairs in order to satisfy the new building code regulations. In staff's opinion, these changes are inconsequential with respect to to either the groundwater protection or coastal protection development permit area, but I just wanted to make that point of clarification for you this evening. And the recommendations are still as per the agenda to issue the permit.
Thank you for making us aware of that change. I need a mover and a seconder for both recommendations. Moved by Councillor Fras, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Doxey. Looks like we have you on the list next. Would you please give us the background on the issue regarding Hirst Avenue West streetscape and utility upgrades, professional services for detailed design, tender document preparation, and associated construction administration?
Sure, if I may, through your worship. So this project is similar to the memorial project that's going on just to the north of it, a block, except this has a considerably less public engagement element of it, minus a lot of the street trees. It'll include some stakeholder engagement for properties along the street, but otherwise it's a much more conventional engineering design and renewal of utilities along the street. So the recommendations are per the report. As you can see, it's in budget, and yeah, recommendations are per the report.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Fras, second by Councillor Wilson. God, I wish we could do something about these professional fees, but I will call, if there's no discussion, I will call. Oh, sure.
It's a question for our Acting Director of Engineering there. With this, through your Mayor, with this upgrade here, is there any crossover benefits that'll happen for the Memorial Street? Like in particular, I'm thinking if any power utilities going underground that may be able to refeed for Memorial.
Sure, if I may, through your worship, to Mr. Fras. Yes, there would be certainly some opportunities for, I see, economies of scale. The proponent that come out on top in terms of the proposal for this project is actually the same consultant that's doing the memorial project, so there'll be some opportunities to align some of the underground utility relocations and coordinate those activities as well. I guess I should maybe point out that the engineering design consulting fees that are associated with these projects are carrying through right through to construction administration. So there's record drawing activities as well as inspection and construction administration that go along with the work. But yes, certainly there would be some opportunities there for economies of scale there with both projects being undertaken by the consultants, both in very close timelines. We're about 6 weeks behind the first project, which gets our communication well underway. So this one will be just coming right in off the backs of it and hopefully hitting the tender market around the same time.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Doxey, pickleball courts.
If I may, through your worship, this is a report in response to a resolution from, I believe it was 2017, to design and construct pickleball courts in Springwood Park. The project was tendered back in 2018. I think with using the public proposal process was a little bit new at the time in the city. We didn't get a lot of uptick on that project or interest from the consulting industry, so we spent some time selling it to the industry, and we've now got some interested parties and have retendered it successfully to get somebody come in, I guess, within budget there for the design portion of this project. So the engineering design was estimated to be $120,000, and the bids had come in at $80,534, and we're recommending a little bit of contingency allowance that would allow for some more detailed, if need be, geotechnical investigation. One additional thing to note might be that on this site, the resolution called for the pickleball courts to be installed near the dog park, where there's a fair amount of slope and tree canopy in that area of the park. And our proposal does require them to provide some siting options. So if that is not necessarily the most economical or socially amenable space in the park to locate the pickleball courts, we'll investigate some additional siting options. There'll be 3 siting options, I believe, in total for this. So we can take a look at cost.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations, for the 3 recommendations. Moved by Councillor Greir, second by Councillor Chandler. Any discussion? Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Patterson.
Through the Mayor to Acting Director of Engineering. Joe, can you tell me, you'll come back with those 3 options to Council, I assume?
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor Wilson, yes, we bring back the siting options, the costs and the benefits of each. Similar process to what we're following on Foster Park, where we'll come back with the options and, like I say, the costs and the benefits and what the impacts will be.
Okay, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Through your worship to our Acting Director of Engineering. So this will go out for design wrap-up and winter timeframe for construction tendering. Is that that's what I see in the report? How long a time frame do we know it will take for construction period?
If I may, through your worship, that's a difficult question to answer at this point in time. It will depend on the site. So if it gets constructed in the site where there's some considerable slope and retaining wall and forest canopy that has to be removed and geotechnical amenity improvement, it'll take considerably longer. It could be as little as 2 months to construct if it's in a flatter area. It could take a little bit longer if there's more, like I say, significant geotechnical improvements required. So,
If it was easy, anybody could do it. All right, any other questions? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Doxey, you're doing very well, so we'll keep you going.
okay, if I may, through your worship, this is regarding the Parksville Community Park Stormwater Management Master Plan report. So this is, it's a project that's been in the queue for some time. This plays along well with the Community Park Master Plan in that we have some drainage infrastructure in place in the community park. A lot of it's not been engineered, so to speak. It's been kind of volunteer or ad hoc construction to deal with individual site-specific problems. The purpose of this report is to develop a drainage plan that really looks at the opportunities for smart or low-impact development drainage systems in the park, what opportunities for bioswales, rain gardens, percolation pits, but to quantify some of those details so that if we do go down that road and incorporate those drainage systems into the drainage plan to facilitate the community park master plan, we want to make sure we don't have failures in a demonstration project. We'd like to have something that creates a bit of a community educative scene as opposed to a failed rock pit or something to that extent. So that's kind of the extent of the project. In terms of the cost, you can see there the budget for the project was $120,000 and the highest ranked proponent, EOR, Emmons and Oliver Resources Canada, they come in just under that budget amount at $119,934.50. The successful proponent, as such, though, is willing to stick handle us securing a grant, the Green Infrastructure Program, and that would facilitate additional funding and contingency should we need see fit. It'll also help backfill and create as many data points as we possibly can so that we're in best defense for things like climate change and a drainage plan that'll grow into the future. So, otherwise, the recommendations are per the report.
I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Chandler. Any discussion? I find it amazing that we were within, $65.50 of the budget. Good guess. All right. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the Acting Director of Engineering, Joe, this is a great report and it makes me really happy that you're going to explore some of these options and hopefully it'll be a blueprint for other projects that come down the line. Thank you.
That's great. Councillor Fras.
Through the mayor to Mr. Doxey, just regarding the water park down there, I'm curious as to how much water gets consumed at the park, what happens to it, and if it's, yeah, I see that. I think you understand what I'm asking.
If I may, through your worship, in some I do. I don't know the exact details on just how much water is consumed to the water park. Actually, Kelly would probably be a better respondent to that. But I know that when it was built, it was plumbed in to be incorporated into a cistern type arrangement for potential reuse. Don't believe it got It didn't get incorporated into the spray park for the purposes of compliance with Vancouver Island Health rationale. There may be other opportunities within the park to do grey water reuse for things like irrigation elsewhere, just not necessarily within the spray park.
So with that, so it's not being reused for irrigation right now then? It's just being drained out?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'm surprised. I thought you would ask if we could have it used in the irrigation.
Well, that's where I'll be going with that, but I think we can kind of
Okay.
get back to the master plan. But I want to find out how much water is being consumed per month too. It'd be nice to know a little bit those details. I think it definitely should be reused into
I agree.
irrigation in the park.
I agree. It'll offset the 1,000 gallons for the fire truck. Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, through your worship, through to Mr. Doxey and Councillor Fras, anyways, as I understand, originally we had asked anyways that the spray park did go into a retention cistern system, but for some reason Island Health said it didn't suit their mandate and so forth, although it was pointed out at the time that the city of Ladysmith, Transfer Beach, already uses their spray park, which actually is identical to ours. And not only do they use that water, they also use water out of the washroom facilities, out of the basins and so forth for their irrigation too. So I'm totally on board with Councillor Fras here to say that yes, we should definitely be considering it. And I see you've already considered it in your grey water retention report. So thank you very much. It's a great report. Thanks.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Great. Thank you. Now for the interesting one. Mrs. Keller, would you please give us a background on the issue?
Thank you, Worship. Council directed staff to look into the regulatory process for adopting a bylaw that would regulate hypodermic needle distribution within the city of Parksville. There are public health bylaws that apply to cities and lay out certain procedures. Staff were in consultation with some representatives from the Ministry of Health at the staff level, but we did not hear back a definitive answer from the policy branch on the required process. So at this point, it appears to our untrained medical eyes that the process outlined in the bylaw, where we would be providing notification to the Minister of Health, would be an appropriate process. There is limited risk in taking this process because if we do need to do additional consultation, the ministry will just let us know at that point. So we have been given information from staff at the ministry that you do not require medical training or registration with the ministry or any kind of certification through Island Health or any medical group to distribute needles, and so therefore staff's opinion at this point is that this is not regulating access to medical services. It's simply regulating the promotion, protection, and preservation of the health of the community and an attempt to maintain sanitary conditions in the municipality. However, if we are incorrect in that assumption, as mentioned, the ministry will just lay out the additional next steps for this particular bylaw. If council is comfortable with the wording that was put into the bylaw, then there is an opportunity to provide readings later on in this agenda. Recommendations at this point are to receive.
By Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Wilson. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Go ahead. Pardon me? It'll come up on the agenda in a bit. Yes, because I have a very long to-do on this one, so. Mrs. Kaler.
Thank you, Your Worship. This next report outlines some recommended requested meetings with ministers at the Union of BC Municipalities meeting happening in September. For the benefit of those in the audience, each year in September, the Union of BC Municipalities provides an opportunity for every city in BC to meet with the provincial ministers responsible for items that come under our jurisdiction. We're not guaranteed a meeting with ministers, but we are required, if we wish to meet with ministers, to submit that requirement, or that request in advance. We must submit the request before July 17th. And so some items have been identified by the mayor and through discussions with some council members. However, staff would request that council endorse the items outlined in attachment 1 and identify any other meetings that councillors wish to request for the September UBCM taking place in Vancouver. And recommendations are per the agenda.
Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion. It's interesting. They had to be in yesterday, July 17th, for the recommendation or for the requests. The last go around, we got a shutout on invitations from the minister. We weren't given any visitations, so it's just. Oh, sorry. Sitting back and not paying. So last year when we put our request through, when the previous council put their request through, they received absolutely zero as for number of ministers that were willing to meet with Parksville. So we're going to try it again this year, and if not, then I think we need to say something loudly to be heard. Councillor Fras.
I'm just looking at what under the Minister of Health here. Thinking the bylaw of the needle distribution would be suitable to put as a request.
We talked about that, and the point here is that we don't think we have to go to them at this point in time, so we don't want to put it up on the table until it comes. That was why. If in fact, we can always bring it up and say, "Oops, sorry," and we can at that time. That was why. Yeah. But we did talk about that. You're absolutely right. Any other questions, points, anything that? So if you have somebody that you would, a minister for something that you think we should be talking, let us know yesterday, okay, if you could, and we'll find. Okay. So we need a motion for that? We need a motion for. Yeah. You got that? We need a motion to support the meeting. Go ahead.
Okay. If I may, Your Worship, if we could get a motion from council indicating support for the topics identified in attachment 1, that would be much appreciated.
So I need pardon me. Yes, for sure. I thought we did too. Yeah, all right. We need to get a mover and a seconder on this. Moved by Councillor Greir, second by Councillor Patterson. Now you can go, Councillor Patterson.
That's all right, Your Worship. I was just going to verbalize the motion to accept what our CAO was.
Yeah, she's got it.
As in the attachment and in our agenda.
Right. All right, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mrs. Keeler, you're still going strong.
Thank you, Your Worship. So earlier this evening at Committee of the Whole, this information was presented to Council, and we are now seeking confirmation from Council that the identified strategic priorities are the correct strategic priorities for this Council. That includes public safety, healthcare and recreation, affordable housing, and economic development and downtown revitalization. There were a number of recommendations or potential action items that have been presented to Council and discussed during committee. We're now seeking some feedback from Council as to which of these items are priority items that you would like staff to investigate and flesh out so that we can develop a work plan for the remainder of this council's term. We have provided a handout for each member of council that just lists the items separated by their category, and there is some suggested wording for motion if a member of council would like to identify an item from the list and direct staff to prepare that business case and add this item to the implementation plan for your strategic plan. At this point, the first recommendation from staff is to receive the report for information, but we are then seeking some further motions from council clarifying that we've got the right mix of information for you to form your strategic plan.
So I want to be seconded by Councillor Greir. Thank you. Discussion on this? All those in favor? We're just receiving on this one, okay? Now we'll go into the recommendations. Councillor Chandler, you had some? Yes, yes. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that staff be directed to undertake a business case regarding the possible implementation of considering leasing, donating land for the cooperative housing projects, one or two of those to look at those.
If I may, Your Worship, Councillor Wilson was asking for the motion to be read out. If council would like to look at page 2 of 17, the motion is that staff be directed to undertake a business case regarding the possible implementation of item number 2, which is to consider leasing or donating land for a cooperative housing project. It's been moved and seconded.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to speak to that. Earlier on, I'm a big proponent of co-op housing. I think it's the single best way to go in some respects, but I think there's also a mix of housing. I totally agree with there's lots of different types that we need here for all different levels. But I think that's one that really speaks to a large percentage of the population that can be used at any time, whether it's a problem where they've got an illness or whatever, situations change, life changes and so on. So I'm a huge proponent of that, so thank you.
Yes?
One thing I'd like to say with supporting co-op housing, I think those are the great spaces when we look at childcare spaces to be able to incorporate them as well. And later on under new business, I'll be speaking to some of the opportunities that are coming up with that. I think co-op housing will be perfectly matched for it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor of item number 2? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Come on, folks. Councillor Greir.
We're on to another motion here. Okay, the staff be directed to undertake a business case regarding the possibility implementation of partnering with Habitat for Humanity for the council consideration during the 2020 provisional budget process. Page 5. Well, yeah, I just to comment, this would bring in some really young families at an affordable price, and we've done this before in a one-house situation on Humphreys, but I think they're talking now something like a townhouses or a 10-plex or something like that, which is really do Parksville well to have such young families and affordable families. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I also agree with Habitat for Humanity. I've worked for them as well, and their new mandate is to build multiple housing, not single-family homes. So my question, though, are we going to have a $2 sign or a $3 sign attached to this motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Wilson. What we intend to do is go away at the staff level now and prepare some options. Depending on what council chooses or directs staff to do, the costs will vary. So if, for example, a piece of land was identified that would be suitable for this and council decided to donate that land, that would probably be closer to the $3 category. But if we were just facilitating a process and acting kind of as a mediator or facilitating a development by expediting it, then it would be on the lower end. So we would go away now and identify a range of options for council to consider.
Yep. Oh, I'll call the question on that one. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next suggestion. Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, through your worship, I would like to propose the following under the crime and safety category, page 9 of 17, regarding number 18, to increase lighting along Craig Street. And I'm modifying the suggestion here because I think I was misunderstood because I made this proposal initially. So it would read to increase the lighting along Craig Street between Jensen Avenue and Hirst Avenue, specifically in the areas that are not currently serviced by electrical power lines overhead. So this would be a solar light, street lighting situation put forth. And I would suggest, I walked the distance this morning, would be approximately 4 or 5 units maximum. I would say go for 5 that way in case we need them. So I would like to propose that motion, if I can shorten that down, you know, keep it. I know.
Next suggestion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make is it a motion or a resolution we're making? Okay, thank you. So it's number 17 to mitigate dangerous intersection at the corner of Alberni Highway and Island Highway with entrance to the CABC, that council directs staff to work with the business and investigate options for the entrance that is the cause of the concern. And perhaps that might be moved to a side street. That is a dangerous corner. So.
Any discussion? I think it's all summed up in Councillor Wilson's, it is a dangerous corner. So all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. All right. We're rolling now. Come on. Councillor Greir.
Thank you, Your Worship. That staff be directed to undertake a business case regarding the possibility implementation of to sell surplus city-owned land for innovative, affordable housing option. That's on page 4. Page 4.
A seconder for that, Councillor O'Brien. Anybody who wants to speak to this? Councillor Wilson, do you have your hand up or are you thinking? Okay, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Anybody else? Can I make a suggestion on this one? Could we just put it in there that we review the feasibility of all of the properties rather than just so that it's taken into consideration for everything?
I think that's a good idea, and I think the city has been working on this. So.
Yeah, we're moving along.
That's fine, yep.
Okay, thank you. So we can make a friendly amendment, and the seconder is fine with it? Doug, are you okay with it? Okay.
I'm okay, yes.
All right. So if that's the case, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Next, Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to ask that staff be directed to undertake a business case regarding the possible implementation for council consideration using the RCMP resources effectively to patrol and deter crime. This would also, I'd like to make a friendly amendment that we also bundle the citizens on patrol and the other aspect with the community block watch all together in one encompassed piece, just to say we want to see more activity in the community park, more activity with bicycle patrols, and whatever possible activity we can do by using our bylaw officers to help with the same end result, I guess, as well as the citizens on patrol. So
She quit writing, so
I
I'm
know.
assuming she's got the message.
that is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Wilson. Discussion? Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to reiterate that we've been working on this for quite some time in respect to the crime rates, and one of the things that we're seeing is it's still sort of spiking in around the 300 calls per week. We're getting a lot of theft from vehicles. I think people are starting to get the message, though. We're starting to be able to say, you know, to people, please lock your vehicles, please lock your stuff up out front of your house, and I think that's helped quite a bit. But I think at the end of the day, it's you know, it's an ongoing problem. It's not going to go away, so I think we really need to try to police it more and just make sure we have as much resources as possible within reason to make sure that we're not open for business for crime. And that's one thing that I think as a council we're all part and parcel of. But I just speak for myself in this case, of course, but I know there's support there. So
I hope you're correct on that as far as I read the crime reports the other day from last month, and the first 4 was theft from unlocked vehicle, theft from unlocked vehicle, theft from unlocked vehicle. First 4 were all from unlocked vehicles. So hopefully the message will slowly get out there. My God. Anyways, I need a seconder for this. Okay. I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councillor Fras.
Just wondering if we can get a recap on which ones have gone through now.
And how many
Numbers would be fine, just so I can take them off.
If I may, Your Worship, the items that have been recommended for staff to develop further plans on include number 2, number 9, number 18 and 17, and number 7, sorry, going back, and then a combination of number 15 and 20 under public safety. And 20 on page 10. That's it so far.
Anyway, so, all right. I'm going to make my one motion for number 38, because that to me is the mother of them all, that and co-op housing. 38 is the one on the swimming pools. So I need a seconder for this, Councillor Fras. Okay, discussion? Oh, good. Councillor Fras too. So Councillor Chandler.
thank you, Worship. This is a question, I think, to CAO Kaler. I wondered if we had actually had any opportunity to ask the RDN for support on the cost of this feasibility study. Was that something we were able to do, or are we still able to do it? I guess that's my follow-up.
If I may, Your Worship,
You may.
through you to Councillor Chandler, We have not staff has not taken any steps in this regard yet until we get a formal motion from council. That is something that we can certainly consider when we're preparing the report. The other item I would ask for some clarification on from the mayor is there's an amount of 50 to 75,000 identified, and then in addition there's pool, recreation center, and sportsplex.
Yes.
Is the mayor's intent to include all three of those, or focus
Yes.
initially on the pool?
No, all three.
Okay, and 50 to 70, up to
Yep.
75? Okay, thank you.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
If I may, through your worship anyways, I propose the following motion to direct staff, for council's perusal. Number 19, page 9 of 17. The motion to read, to direct staff to research the costs and feasibility of a pilot project to install solar-powered LED flashing crosswalk beacons at a predetermined Highway 19A locations and report back to council on cost savings for the reduced electricity weighed against installation and maintenance costs. Show this motion error.
I need a seconder for the discussion. Councillor Patterson, you seconding? Okay. Please.
If I may, through your worship, just to speak on this, these are the LED flashing crosswalk beacons that I hope to have passed by council, so forth, so that we can actually enact under public safety the many comments we had about safety pedestrian walking on 19A. These are the LED, very effective solar beacons. They're available from local companies. It obviously would go for RFP if successful, but the thing is that they're very cost effective, and I would suggest that if we went for like a half dozen of them as a pilot project, I think it would be an awfully good start to slow down the traffic and make it better for the pedestrians on 19A. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? The only thing, I love the idea of the crosswalk, the LEDs and the lights and that, but I'd certainly like to know what it's going to cost us to do it before I jump in and say, let's go and do some testing, or can we get can we ask, make it in 2 stages? Is it in there?
We're going to research the cost and feasibility of the
save? Oh, okay.
and then come back to council.
All right. So it's 2 steps, what you're proposing, is that?
If I may, through your worship, to answer your question, as far as the cost-wise, I actually have documentation from the engineer from the township of Maui, anyways, as to where they got their solar beacons from and approximate costs that were involved. And when I said where they were located from, she says actually where you live on Vancouver Island. So anyways, and so that's where it's come from. I have the costs if available to do preliminary. I already know, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I bet you expensed that trip, didn't you?
I'm going to, under the next motion, put that.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. All right. If I want? It's what the council wants to do. I mean,
Okay.
we're up to 8. It's going to keep you going right through to the end of budget time here.
This
So
is it, okay? That staff be directed to undertake a business case regarding the possibility implementation of conduct a development cost charge DCC review and investigate differential rates for targeted areas like downtown.
yes. Councillor Patterson is seconding that one without
number
thought.
3. Number 5 on page 3.
You're seconding that, Councillor Patterson? Okay. Any discussion? I think that's a very important one. Good. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? All right, let's wrap it at that, and then we'll keep the rest of them in there. Oh, did you have another one?
Just a quick clarification. On number 10 of lobbying the Union of BC Municipalities and Provincial Government for changes to subdivision requirements, would that be one that we could do at UBCM, or does that require staffing? Can we just put it in with when we go to UBCM?
Yeah, let's do it there.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we can put it in. We still got until the 17th. Councillor Chandler?
Just to follow up on Councillor Patterson's comment there, I was wondering, because I see 3 or 4 that are pretty important ones, the lobbying of the doctors, shortages in the region.
Yeah.
We've got things like
That's on there already.
crime and safety,
Yeah.
you know, making sure penalties are stiffer.
Yep.
Can we talk about that on the next possible council
Sure.
meeting? Put that in as a bundled group of items that we're going to bring those forward?
If you recall, we did speak to that, and for what we were bringing to the Minister of Health, it was in there for the doctors and so on. So yes, but if there's something else, let's get it on, all right, so that we can, hopefully we can get at least 1 or 2 ministers to talk to us. All right? Yeah.
And that's more just from a perspective of maybe doing some more planning before we go to the UBCM.
Yes.
And just like I realize we're going to anyways, but this is just really timely to try to do that all in one bundle,
Absolutely,
kind of like that.
absolutely.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Can I ask council for endorsement of the strategic plan itself, the 2-pager?
Okay. Yes, that's a very important one, isn't it? Okay. So what we need is, according to the CAO, we need an endorsement, a motion to endorse the 2-page strategic plan. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Greir. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? At last. A lot of hard work on that one. Yeah, poof. All right, that's it. Let's move on to the next. Where's policy review, Mrs. Kaler?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff were given direction during the budgeting process this year to amend the council contingency policy to provide councillors the ability to access up to $1,000 per term to reimburse them for the purchase of electronic devices that are required for council business. The policy has been amended per that direction and requires council approval before we can add it to the corporate policy manual.
I'd like to have a friendly amendment for number 2 of this policy, where it talks about it permitted to access up to $1,000. I'd like to see that be at 50% matching. So the purpose of that would be to attach a little bit of responsibility to whoever would be accessing it, and puts a level of resistance in there so that you wouldn't just be accessing the fund just because it's available. So if it was, you know, a $1,000 device, then you would be covering half, and then the policy would be covering half. So that to have full access to the $1,000 would mean a $2,000 spend. So it's matched from the city and through the individual.
I need a seconder for that amendment. All right, we have Councillor Chandler. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor Fras's friendly amendment, I believe the $1,000 is a good figure to start at, and the fact of the matter, I think it's a good one to go with because it covers a lot of the costs of all that we need to spend. Otherwise, you're going to then trigger a possible buyout of, okay, if we've only spent $1,000 so far, let's go spend another $2,000, let's go spend another $1,000 so that we get $1,000 back. To me, it's just kind of a waste. The thing is that this is per term, so this would be the only time per term anyways that it would be allowed. So I like it the way it is, you know, without being amended to putting 50% on it, because otherwise, you know, like we're just gonna go out and spend more money that you don't maybe need to, in my opinion.
I think you missed the purpose of that, though. It's not like,
Through the chair.
through the chair, if I may, to Councillor O'Brien. The purpose would be that to access the full amount, like you would only be reimbursed at 50% of it. So if you're spending $1,000, let's say, for a new device, you would only be reimbursed $500 of it, so that you're covering a portion of it and the city is covering a portion, rather than it just being the city covering the full portion of it. So, like, for example, like in my case, for example, I don't need a new phone. If I were to go buy a new phone, though, like, and there's $1,000 there, what kind of resistance is there for me right now, or why would I not go buy a new phone if there's $1,000 available for me to purchase a new one, just upgrade it? If you have a 50% matching to it, then it makes me reconsider and say, well, if I really need this, then I have some ownership and some responsibility attached to that as well.
Councillor Chandler, and then come back to it.
Thank you. Just a comment, and I appreciate the ownership scenario. I think that's the other thing to consider, is that there is an ownership of this particular piece of equipment, and that would be leaving with that person when they're done their term. So they actually do own it, and it's an asset of theirs when they buy it. So I think that's another fair reason to look at it as being a half split. So thank you.
Let everybody speak that hasn't spoke.
Through the mayor, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fras, I really don't agree with this amendment. I think that many communities supply electronic equipment to councillors, so $1,000 is pretty minimal. And I doubt that anybody on this council is going to just buy something for the sake of, or take that money. I'm not sure whether or not this might be a question to our CAO, whether or not anyone has purchased anything yet, but $1,000 is pretty minimal. And I think it's pretty reasonable that council members be allowed to have equipment supplied, or at least some cost supplied for, rather than using their own equipment.
I'm looking for people with first time first, and then we'll come back. Nobody else wants to speak for the first time? Then Councillor O'Brien is next, and then you.
If I may, through your worship, to further on this motion, after doing research anyways, what other locations in our area, such as the RDN, have done, the RDN have allowed their directors and so forth to have a 100% use of a laptop and I believe a phone as well, and a device, and without any cost at all to those directors at all. If I'm incorrect, you could correct me right now. But as I understand, it was a 100% donation to them as well. I'm not sure what happens at the end of the term, but it saved them from going out and purchasing anything without any cost of their own. So that was my research with the RDN. And the other thing is that realize that this is a maximum of $1,000, that we're not mandated to actually go out. If we only need a tablet for $500, and that's what we can buy. We don't have to, and it's only reimbursed at the $500 amount. So it's a maximum of $1,000. So I would anticipate that the charges would be less than $1,000. Thank you.
I just wanted to respond through your mayor to Councillor Wilson. This wouldn't be directed at anyone here, particularly on council. It's that this would be a policy that would be carried forward from this council to future councils. As Councillor O'Brien mentioned at the RDN, it is different. I think they have room to review that as well, because I do think that there should be responsibility on each side of it. So it's something I think would be fair. So yeah, it's not directed at anyone here.
through the mayor to Councillor Fras, I would say if you want to put something through like this, then perhaps the $1,000 should be up to $2,000 so that someone would put in, $1,000, because really to only be reimbursed $500 for a laptop or some kind of equipment to do council business is pretty minimal.
Just a point of clarification, though, but if it's $1,000 that they're going to, that is exactly what it would take. It's a $2,000 purchase that would only refund $1,000. Okay, so, yeah, you're saying the same thing, both of you. Well, I'm missing it then.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. What I'm saying is that it's pretty difficult to buy anything for $500 in the way of some sort of technological equipment to do this council business. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe there is some similarity there, but whatever. It just isn't making sense to me to make this motion in the first place. So.
I'll go back to, it's not $500 though, it's $1,000, is it? Up to $1,000, yeah. So it would be a $2,000 purchase. So I think you two are saying the same things, is what I was saying. So anyways, let's call the question on the amendment. Let's call it, let's keep calling the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? 4. Opposed? It's 3. All right, so now it's $1,000 with 50% contribution is the question. So all those in favor of the question of $1,000, 50% up to $1,000. It's amended. Yeah, that's the question we have to ask now. We just voted on the amendment. Now we're voting on the amended motion. So we have to do that. So on his amendment. We haven't voted on the first motion yet. All right. All those in favor of the amended motion? Opposed? So it reversed itself. So it dies. It dies on the table. No, we have no policy on it. It died. Yeah. You can't put the same you can't do the same information or on the same item when it comes up to new business. I'll make the ruling, so okay? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you can do a notice because it has to go to the next meeting. All right, 2 readings. City of Parksville regulation on hypodermic needles. That the City of Parksville regulation of hypodermic needle distribution bylaw 2019 number 1555 and zoning and development amendment bylaw 2019 number 2000.125 be read first and a second time. I need a mover and a seconder. This is for the needle. Councillor Fras, second by Councillor Chandler. Discussion on this. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our CAO, when would this come back for 3rd reading?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Patterson, what we would do next is refer this bylaw to the Minister for notification and await either acceptance of the notification or further direction as to additional consultation that might be required. We would hope that we would hear back in September at the latest, but will be dependent upon their timelines.
I'll support the first and second reading, but I do believe that we need further clarification from Ministry of Health. I don't believe that this can be enforced. I also don't feel that an authorized distributor is going to put their name on a needle type distribution, and that there's costs and everything involved. From someone who is a diabetic and uses 4 different needles a day, in addition to glucose testing, and that there's just a lot of unanswerable questions for me at this point.
Any other discussion? Councillor Fras.
To our CEO through the mayor, I guess when I read this, it to me was more for the distribution of free needles, not the ones that were purchased through pharmacies. Is that correct? And my question would be then, what kind of labeling, what would it look like, or how would they achieve that? I'm not sure what the end result would be, like how you would label a needle.
If I may, Your Worship, this bylaw was based directly on the direction from council. I think if somebody is wishing to distribute needles, it does specifically say harm reduction supplies, so that doesn't include pharmacies or folks who are purchasing medical supplies for their own medical needs. I believe there are a number of different options. There's different, the needles come, from what I understand, in a sealed package, but there's different colors or different, or you can order a different kind of needle that maybe before it's sanitized has different labeling on there. In many cases, we would sort of rely on the distributor to meet our to comply with our requirements. And that's probably where consultation with the Ministry of Health might shed some light on it. We have been told, I guess the tricky side of it from a staffing perspective is that we're kind of taking the position that it's not medical supplies. If you don't require a doctor or nurse or any kind of medical certification to hand out these supplies, it's difficult then to classify them as medical services. So it's an unknown. We don't have any examples to draw from on this one, so it's certainly a pioneering effort from the city.
Yes, please.
I do want to speak a little bit on this because I think this is great to see a bylaw like this coming forward, just for the fact that it weighs in on an issue that I think communities have been left out of for quite a long time. With it being in the medical field, it's kind of viewed as this is a healthcare problem or healthcare issue, but I don't think it's exclusively a healthcare issue when the harm reduction model has only been looked at best practices for the benefits of drug users, and we've seen over the years that this problem's only gotten worse. It hasn't been any better. It's gotten worse, becoming a huge community concern. It's been resulting in thousands of improperly disposed of dangerous needles all throughout our community. It's resulted in city staff being poked, had residents in Parksville here injured, parents, they're worried sick for their children's safety and ability to play outside, visit our playgrounds, and even attend field trips. I think people are justified in their complaints and their perception of danger, and we're not experts in healthcare. This issue is beyond being an exclusive healthcare issue. Since we are the decision makers and the experts on what the impacts to our city, this is why I think it's not only appropriate for us to be considering this bylaw, but to ensure that we continue to move forward on having harm reduction include the safety and comfort for our entire community. What I support in this bylaw in particular is the retractable needles, which I see as becoming a harm elimination and not just a harm reduction. So I'm glad that we're taking this step here, and I look forward to seeing how it progresses.
I'm going to speak in favor of this bylaw. In fact, in the total of 3 years that I've been mayor, I have never been more in favor of a bylaw than I am of this one. I believe that we have an obligation to protect the 14,000 people of Parksville. And those of you that say that no one ever gets stuck by a needle, I can tell you that I'm aware of at least 4 different issues where people have been stuck, so that's not true. That is 4 times too much of what we need. And given the choice between 14,000 people and 40 or 50 people, I can tell you which way I'm going to vote in this matter. I know if the rest of council feels as strong about this as I do, we will get pushback by a few individuals and by various government agencies who have different views than our citizens. Be prepared for an onslaught of emails and letters from the so-called experts, those that claim to know more about this than we do, the same ones that have allowed the addiction problem to become an epidemic. It has increased tenfold over the last couple of years alone. Currently, the distribution is totally uncontrolled. Island Health does not require the registration of those individuals that are distributing needles. Somebody can just walk in and be handed a box of needles and told to go out and hand them out. This is nonsense. They do not control the number of needles being given out to individuals, and in fact, it has been witnessed where they encourage you to take more than what you actually ask for. There are several organizations that claim that this system will be giving out multitudes of needles is necessary to provide greater harm reduction. I challenge this approach. It may, in fact, reduce somewhat the spread of disease by providing clean needles, but I'm sorry, but since this approach has been in effect over the last 4 or 5 years, we have witnessed a huge increase in intravenous drug use to the point where we are now finding hundreds of needles laying around on the grounds all over our town. We are told by Island Health that we should provide additional sharp depositories around the city. Not that they are going to provide these, that they want us to provide us. They want us to maintain these. They're downloading their costs to us. We have seen on a daily basis where sharp containers are right there. We've seen it in the washroom, just over here in the washroom, where you've got a sharp container in there and the damn needle's sitting on the floor because they can't even be bothered to put the needle in the sharp needle. So the whole thing is just nonsense. There's only so much we can do. Island Health says that if we don't provide them clean needles, they will use dirty ones. We have never said not to provide clean needles, but what we are saying is that in order to get clean needles, you must return your used one. The users have to take some responsibility here for their actions. We need to hold the different distributors responsible for their actions. The only way we can do that is by being able to identify where they come from. I suggested the putting of the name of the organization on the needles so that we can have, so that the most of the needles are coming from, and one particular organization that we can address it if we have a problem. The other major part of this is, by law, is that only allowing retractable needles to be distributed. This would prevent the users from giving their needles to other users. You only get one shot at it, and then the needle's no good after that. So you take away that whole nonsense about, oh, we're just going to pass needles around. Well, no, if you give away retractable needles, you've eliminated that problem. Why don't they want to give away retractable needles? It's because they cost more than regular needles. And so Island Health just is more worried about what the cost is than what the upside is on this. So I ask Council to look at this issue with common sense and ask yourself, has giving needles out there by the hundreds reduced the additional problem? Has it decreased the number of needles we have found laying on the ground? And if you can't answer yes to either one of those, then maybe you should be voting yes for this bylaw. So that's my speech for the day. Councillor Wilson.
That was great.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to ask, how will this be policed? I mean, how are we going to ensure that they follow the bylaw? Who's going to enforce it?
Well, you're counting on the different organizations to be at least honest. I mean, they're reputable organizations around. They're not going to be breaking the rules for this. They will squawk and they will grumble about it, but they will if we can enforce this. And yes, I believe that, and if the province says, no, you can't do this, then I want to stand up on the desk and scream from the top of my lungs to the people of Parksville about the fact that we're trying to protect them, and the province of Ontario is worried about the 40 people around town that use them.
Follow up?
Pardon me?
Follow up?
Yes, please.
Well, I agree with you. The only concern I had is whether we should go to the third motion tonight or respect Councillor Patterson's request that we have 2 readings. But I do agree with the bylaw.
We don't want to go to the third until we've heard back from the province. That's so that's sometime in September. That was the reason. Okay. Yeah, sorry, the CAO has just brought up another point. It's through this process over the next while before it gets all finalized. We will be talking about the fines that will be incurred as well, but we haven't set that yet. Councillor Fras.
And through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, part of it when you talk about how do you police it, the needles aren't just distributed from places like the Oceanside Health there. Across the street from us in our parking lot on certain days of the week, there are people that give out needles out of the back of their vehicle. So whether it's are they qualified medical staff or not, and to what degree and how is that being overseen, it's not clear. They're not registered with the city, so we have no idea who they are or how it's happening. Those are the types of things where it should be mitigated to some degree. It's not saying that at the hospital or at the Oceanside Health Center that they're not using better practices, but I think then happening here in our parking lot, the bylaw officers would be able to see then if they're following the rules or not.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment again, just in respect to, I think the vanishing point needles, it'd be great to see that that's another initiative that we bring forward in the UBCM initiatives that we're going to try to get together and talk about. And I think that would, there's a lot of communities that are dealing with the same thing. It's going on all over the island and all over different parts of the mainland and probably all over Canada, basically. So
it's all over the province for sure.
So I think, that lobbying to get towards this retractable needle program, I think is a really good solution or a good step forward at least. So I'd just like to make sure we get that together if we can talk about that for the UBCM. Thank you.
All right, any other conversation? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Yep, final adoption for sanitary and storm sewage system amendment bylaw 2019 number 13.19.16. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Move by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Greir. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Notices of motion. Just before we get into this, I'm almost feeling that, last meeting the motion was delayed because Councillor Fras asked to have it delayed until this meeting. I'm almost feeling like that's a notice of motion was back there to say we were bringing it up. Pardon me? So. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking it is. This is for the landscaping of it. It's not a notice of motion, it is a motion.
It's for consideration tonight, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just read notice of motion at the top, that's why. Okay. I need a mover and a seconder for the motion first before we go. Councillor Chandler and seconded by Councillor Fras. All right. Discussion.
Thank you. Through your worship to CAO Killer, I know the process is through the notice of motion and then the motion at this particular time. I would like to, though, review this a little bit more. I'd like to table this for another couple of weeks. I went to Marks Park 5 days ago before I took off to go on my trip up to Powell River. And I tend to agree with, stripping out a bunch of trees and and dealing with stuff, I really respect Warren's info, and I think it's important for me and everybody else, I think, to get more info on this. I think it's...
Table it till next meeting.
Yeah, so if that's okay,
I
I'd
need
like
a
to do that.
seconder.
I just wanted to give it a reason, that's all.
Councillor Fras, seconded. And there's no debate on this, so all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're on to the park, the landscaping and that for the other one. That was also one that was deferred to this one, so it's not a notice of motion, it is a new motion. It's for discussion. So I need a mover and a seconder for it. Pardon me? Move it, seconded. Councillor Chandler, discussion?
So this motion is for the consideration of landscaping at Retegno Park in
Yes.
Cedar Ridge there. And so I had staff print off the report that we had at our previous meeting. You should have it in front of you there. In that report, there was different options outlined in there. I'm not sure what everyone's level of knowledge is on the situation there, so this time I'll maybe open it up for questions to see if there's any comments or questions. And as well to the mayor, just have a comment as well. And to the mayor, just recognizing too, before this meeting got started, when we had our public hearing, it didn't have much of a, I don't know if there was a window for anyone from the gallery to speak on this item there too. I don't know if it's able to.
Can't now.
Okay.
Can't now.
So,
I'll make the motion if you want on this for number 4. Yeah, please, yeah, we'll just read it out for number 4.
If I may, Your Worship, the option number 4 identified in the staff report is to remove the ditch and existing plantings in Parklink Park, grade to a new catch basin, and establish lawn, planting trees, and irrigating the upper portion.
I need a seconder for that. Seconded by Councillor Fras. Discussion.
It should be in front of you. It's in front of everybody.
All right, any discussion while we're sending that around? Councillor O'Brien?
Councillor Patterson.
Councillor Patterson?
If I may, I'll go through the CAO, through your worship to CAO.
Excuse me for a second. Mark, can you give yours? Yeah, thanks.
To CAO, keep up. On option 4, I just have questions because last time we had different options here, so I had my own favorite option. So under 4, it says remove the ditch and existing plantings in the park. And so my questions are, what are the existing plantings in the park around the exterior and so forth? And what is that? What's actually already there? Like, I went up to the site and I was unsure if I was looking at the right location.
What I saw there was a bunch of rose bushes that are just running wild all over the place. What it does is it just makes everything very complicated to keep it nice and clean. It'd be easier for our ops people to get in there with a riding lawnmower and run around and just have a couple trees. Yeah, Adam's gone.
Okay, if I ask, as a follow-up, then it's the entire location along the path, or is it just along that section?
not the lower end, it would be the upper portion.
Okay, so the plantings that were planted were their wild rose and that type of thing, is that the idea that it was? So they were supposed to be localized plants, that's what they were. So now that they're proposing, this seems like it's going to be a huge undertaking and a huge amount of maintenance to go to lawns. Like, you know me, I'm all for the trees, but it's like going to be a huge grassy area as well as irrigated as well. So it's going to be a large addition. Warren is gone now, but would it not entail like actually rejigging some staff or adding some staff time to it? Because he's already, I know after talking, well, Kelly could maybe help, that they're maxed out already with all the stuff that they have to do in the summertime, so is this going to mean hiring another staff member?
That's correct. It probably wouldn't, it would increase the amount of staff time. Whether it would take another staff, it would be a part of a staff. It wouldn't be a full staff member.
I think what we have to bear in mind here is the fact that we made the developer put $85,000 into this park, and it didn't work. It was, I mean, the ditch hasn't had an ounce of water in it since the day it was dug. The plants were, and we don't have the staff to go in there with a hand lawnmower and cut around all these plants and do all the work. So we've made the mistake, and why should the people in the area have to put up with it? I mean, it really is a mess. And it crawls underneath fences, it goes across the pavement. It's something we should be ashamed of, the fact that what we did to them on this. And that was, that was years ago when it was done, but when the plans were set. But they put in an irrigation system for the first 2 years, and then it was taken out. I mean, all the developer did the right things here. It was done at our direction in the long run. So.
Thank you, Your Worship, for the clarification. And I believe, I guess, probably my frustration is the fact that usually in a case like this of this whole development itself, that it's up to the developer to pay for this initial landscaping plan. And the thing is, we usually score very well in what happens, but this is a mess. And I know even the residents themselves suggested that they would clean it up themselves. The thing is that I know that they want this, so the thing is that I don't doubt it at all, but I guess I'm just frustrated that it got to this point. I will support this, yes.
Councillor Patterson, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Your Worship. I know that we have residents in the audience that have waited very, very patiently, not just tonight, but over a period of probably 3 years, because they have been in attendance. They have wrote to the previous councillors and have met with staff and that in the past. It is very much a disservice that it's got to this point. I hope that the recommendation tonight gives them a bit of closure, but my question, I guess, would be through our CAO to Kelly is cost factor in the budget and priorities of when this can be accomplished.
If I may, Your Worship,
You may.
through you to Councillor Patterson, we would certainly not be in a position to do this until we're proposing maybe early 2020. There is, I believe, I don't have the report now, I've passed it on to Councillor Wilson, but I believe it's $30,000, which is not accounted for in this year's budget. But our discussions at the staff level were that we could bring it to council in the fall for discussions in the provisional budgeting cycle and make it a priority for early in 2020 in our off-peak season.
Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess it's option number 3. Sort of sounds like it might be half natural and half manicured, if you will. I'm just wondering if anyone can speak to that option for me. Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking at 4. Yeah.
I realize you are, but I'm just wondering about option 3.
Sure.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, I think with option 4, the benefit and reasoning there is it's the value that it's adding to this neighborhood. In the current state that it's at, this park is providing no value to them. It's not usable as parkland. It's just a nuisance area amongst a trail for the many reasons I mentioned about the overgrowth, the pushing out the fences from the rose bushes to the grass drying up and becoming fire hazards to drainage not being used. Meeting halfway still doesn't reach that breakthrough of it becoming a usable space for the neighborhood. So it's one of those things, you either go all the way or you just fell short of meeting it to begin with. So that's why I think the support option 4.
I think my argument or my reason for coming to this was, if the shoe was on the other foot and we were going after the developer, we wouldn't settle for half a pie. We'd want the whole pie done properly. And that's exactly what I think that they deserve out of this. Is we screwed up on this one royally right from the word go. So let's admit to it, belly up to the bar, and get it done for them. I mean, I know that I would expect that the residents aren't going to be exceptionally happy that it's going to take until 2020, but at least they can have the assurances that we're going to do it. Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, Your Worship, would this be one of the projects we spoke of just in the last 2 weeks anyways at the strategic planning meeting, where we, instead of hiring full-time staff, we actually had the ability to hire a temporary staff or a part-time staff or something like this? Would this qualify for that, that we could get on it? Because it's only is the start of July here type of thing, and then I know that these residents have lived with this for far too long, and they've had to put up with it, and it looks like bloody hell. And so do they have to put up with another whole season? Like, here we are, is it a chance that we could hire a temp staff anyways that could jump up there right now and get in there and make some changes right now? Because all that grass is going to go brown, and then you know what's going to happen then. So I'm just thinking, is there a possibility that we can use your suggestion as a temporary staff to get things going a little quicker?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor O'Brien, we have actually hired a lot of temporary staff, casual staff already, to just keep our head above water with the other requirements that we have. The other item that we don't have $35,000 in the budget. Council could direct us to amend the budget, but when a lot of those type of amendments come forward, it may in fact affect the tax rates that we've put in place with our existing budget. And so I do understand that everybody would like this to happen right away, but we feel that we could accommodate it 6 months later. It would be sort of early in 2020, once our peak season, you know, the fall season has passed and we have a provisional budget adopted. We could be directed to stop doing the work that we're doing on our high priority areas, like the plantings and things that we're working on right now. And we would then seek a resolution from council or a motion from council to amend our budget for 2019, knowing that there are implications of that just with the current tax rates that we've put in place. We will do what you tell us.
I haven't had a woman say that before. All right. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of number 4? Opposed? Thank you very much on that. All right. Does anybody have any new business? Oh, no.
Thank you, Your Worship. This motion that staff be directed to undertake consultation with School District 69, Ministry of Transportation, Infrastructure, Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce, the Oceanside Development and Construction Association, Regional District of Nanaimo, respecting the concept of facilitating an affordable housing development for families on the city-owned property located at 130 Shelly Road. That upon conclusion of the aforementioned consultation, staff be directed to prepare a summary report, official community plan amendment bylaw, and zoning and development amendment bylaw for the concept at 130 Shelly Road for council's consideration. Second.
So we're okay. You're right. Thank you. That's what I get for not paying attention. All right. Councillor Greir, we're just going through our checklist of what things. Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a notice of motion that all council meetings to be held in the forum at City Hall, that all, in order that they are video recorded. Resident feedback indicates that people want to be able to watch council meetings at their leisure. It provides a means for staff to review the meetings to ensure that any errors in note-taking can be corrected. It is more efficient and cost-effective to have the meetings at the City Hall.
I need a seconder for that. Councillor O'Brien? Oh, it's a notice of motion, you're right. Yeah, we'll argue about it next week, next meeting. All right. All right, anybody else? Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to present a notice of motion anyways that council can consider out of the contingency fund for the next meeting, motion to permit council members to access funding for electronic devices.
Oh, okay, so it's the notice of motion. For
Notice of motion.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, to bring it back up.
For what?
Oh,
Oh,
he's bringing back the
I
same
was
motion.
trying to read it.
Word 5.
If you,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
or you could just bring back and have a reconsideration of the vote.
Yeah, let's restart that. Your Worship, I'd like to make a notice of motion for the next council meeting to allow elected officials be permitted to access up to $1,000 each from council contingency for term of council for reimbursement of electronic devices required for council business. Reimbursement would have to be based on receipts being submitted and approved by the CAO.
Yeah, that's fine. Could we not just do it as a reconsideration?
Yeah,
Easier.
that's what I tried.
Let's
yeah.
just do it as a reconsideration. Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
yeah. All right, any other new business? Pardon? You have new business? No, I don't want to hear it. Do you have a notice of motion? Okay, what is it? Just new business. Because I've got something I've got to do. Okay, go.
Okay, so I just wanted to give council an update on our childcare needs assessment application we had put through with ELCO, the Early Learning Childcare Council of Oceanside. We have received the grant for a total of $125,000. It's partnered with 4 other communities, them being District of Lanцeville, the Town of Qualcomm Beach, and the Regional District of Nanaimo, along with the City of Nanaimo. And so right now there is an RFP out that the City of Nanaimo has put forward. I have printed off a copy here if anyone wanted to take a look at it. The closing date for this RFP goes July 16th, and then it's asking for the final needs assessment to be handed July 2020 with a possible 6-month extension if it was needed. With that, maybe I drafted up something here. I'll just read this through here so I don't miss anything. So this application is the result of incredible effort from the ELCO group, the Early Learning Childcare Council of Oceanside, who spearheaded and brought us all together in making this happen. With this funding, the City of Nanaimo has taken the lead role to issue the RFP for the needs assessment that will give each community an assessment of the magnitude of childcare needs in our community. The RFP is now out. As I mentioned, I have a copy here, and with the final assessment being July 2020. One thing that I think is worth noting is that in Canada, we rank at the very bottom of developed countries for childcare-friendly policy. And in BC, the statistic is 1/3 of the children are vulnerable in one of the 5 sectors made up from physical, social, emotional, and language and communication. In our area in particular, at School District 69, that number unfortunately is even behind the provincial average. We're nearing 40%. The opportunities ahead of us with this childcare needs being recognized means that we can better understand where we can tailor the spaces in our community to best address where we're lacking. In my opinion, I think this needs assessment will come up to show a big gap under toddler care for in the 0 to 5 range. But regardless where we put our efforts towards children, I think it's going to be worth it. The next step of the funding available is for major capital to create new childcare spaces. And this funding is able to be applied for even ahead of our needs assessment being completed. And that's because of the known shortfall throughout our province for spaces. As I mentioned, I think co-op housing is going to be a great way where we can couple it into. Some of the changes that the provincial government's looking at doing is to recognize that early childcare is education. The first 2,000 days of life being the most important towards development, and making sure that access to quality early childhood learning, it's available to everybody. There's a lot that I'd like to share about where things are going with this, but I'm going to save some of it for the fall, as I'm hoping to bring in Sharon Gregson as a delegation to give a proper presentation to council, and she's going to be better able to explain and answer questions on that. With that said, though, I want to give a little recognition where it's due, and I think it's important to give thanks for the much-needed support for childcare in our province and in Parksville. With that, I'd like to give a special thanks to Katrina Chen. She's the Minister of State for Childcare and providing supports and solutions for helping families in BC. And this is the first time in a generation that there's been this large of a funding attempt to facilitate childcare planning. So for that, I want to thank Katrina Chen. But also the biggest thank you to ELCO for being the leaders. And they're actually the largest collaboration on this issue in all of BC. One of the recommendations was to have childcare councils be formed to address this kind of needs, and they were actually ahead of the game on this, even months ahead of that recommendation coming out. For the last 6 months, I've been working with them, and they've been wonderful to be able to sit at their table. I'm excited to continue being at their table, and with that, I'd like the work that I'm doing with them to have council's blessing to continue. So I would like to move that council approves the mayor to appoint me as a liaison to the Early Learning Childcare Council of Oceanside. So perhaps that is as a notice of motion, or we can take it as resolution now if council is willing to.
Actually, I just have a procedural thing. I just wasn't sure how to manage it, but I wanted to invite as a delegation the Oceanside Community Safety folks in 2 weeks for the next council meeting, so they can do a presentation. Okay, yeah, just to be able to do a presentation to us on some potential opportunities to do some more patrolling with a special bike crew and vehicle patrols late at night and stuff like that. So I'd like them to be able to come in and do that. So I'm not sure how that goes, and do I do that as an invitation to them, or how does that work? Sure, certainly. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to get back up on my soapbox for one more time tonight. Sorry, folks, but it's necessary. As mayor, I'm responsible for appointing councillors as liaisons, as we've just witnessed, to community groups. From time to time, I'm asked to consider the value of having elected officials continue in a liaison position. I regret to say it has been brought to my attention that some members of the Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness are continually directing anger and frustration about this council's decisions making and its policy platform at the appointed council liaison, Councillor Fras. This was confirmed by independent participants who attended several recent meetings. The purpose of the liaison is to share information between the group and members of council. Councillors in a liaison role are owed a certain level of respect as individuals volunteering their time, and also due to their status as duly elected members of council. It is not appropriate for elected officials to be attacked verbally in meetings or subjected to constant complaints about council decision. It appears as there is a significant amount of personal animosity towards the members of this council, which is unfortunate. The city is working closely with BC Housing and building a strong partnership on housing and social initiatives. At this time, I am withdrawing the position of liaison to the Oceanside Task Force on Housing and advising the community that instead of this position, we will continue to foster productive partnerships with BC Housing. I am directing staff to notify the task force of this decision effective immediately. We're not going to put up with it. So anyways, thank you. I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Greir, second by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody wants to keep going? Okay. That's it. Thank you. Holy cow.